Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hunter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemar, the sergeant at arms of the PBA.
And today we're excited to have Reverend Mike Staneck on with us. Mike is the Chief Chaplain of the Suffolk County Police Department. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
You're welcome, and I appreciate CJ and Tanner inviting me to come over and talk a little bit to you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So for everybody out there watching, just tell us a little bit about your role as a Chief Chaplain. What do the chaplains do for the police department?
All right, so there are a couple of different roles, and there are a couple of different roles for the chaplains. We have Steve Unger, who's the chaplain for critical incident. And so when something happens where there has to be a response, something has happened tragically, or there's just some event that has happened, he's the first line. So he goes in, talks to the officers that might be affected. The other chaplains, which then fall under my command, what I've tried to do since I came on as Chief Chaplain after Rabbi Moss was to expand our role a little bit to be a little bit more than just ceremonial. Mm-hmm. Where for so long what it was where a chaplain would pray at a promotion ceremony or at a graduation. And that was kind of the only focus really where the chaplains were. They were to make sure they got to the precincts as well. And what I've tried to do is to get a little closer to what, although not directly what Steve's doing, and not to step on what Steve's doing, but to be able to offer. So after Steve talks with an officer, mm-hmm. Then the follow-up is done by the chaplains that are under my command. And so what we've done is and this is before me, every precinct there's a chaplain assigned. So even though we're chaplains for the entire department, each chaplain has a specific precinct that they call on directly, and that helps for just being familiar with the officers, and so that the officers and the command are familiar with the chaplains. If you see a face this way when something does happen, and this is why I've tried to have the chaplains get a little bit more involved in the day to day, because when I've done this with my congregation and my community it's about relationships.
Right.
And if you're comfortable speaking to me or comfortable speaking to another chaplain, then when something occurs, it's easier to have a conversation.
Absolutely,
it's easier to talk. And so that's kind of what we've tried to do. So we still do the ceremonial prayers and we still do the precinct visits. Right now, we're still down a chaplain for various reasons, but hopefully by the new year we can fill that in.
How do you get involved with the police department as a chaplain?
It was just about 8 years ago. Right now, it was 2017, and I had put together a community of clergy. So it was other pastors, priests, and rabbis who we would meet occasionally and just discuss what's going on, because we're in the same community. And so we're going to face similar issues, right? And our people are going to be the same, even though their faith may be different. We were at a restaurant for Christmas time, having lunch, and Rabbi Moss was there. And we're done with lunch. And as he's walking out, he turns around. I don't know if you guys are too young for this, but Columbo used to be a detective. And he would kind of turn around and go, "Oh, one more thing."
I used to love Columbo. I used to watch that with my grandparents. Yeah.
That make me feel OCD. I watched it when it was first run. So, he said, "We're looking for a chaplain for the department. Is anybody interested?" I said, "Well, tell me more about it when you get a chance." And long story short, he told me more about it, and that's really how it started. To be honest, at the time, my son was a deputy sheriff down in North Carolina, and so my interest in the police department, had really kind of increased a little bit. And my dad, years and years ago, this going back to the 1950s, before the Suffolk County was even put together as a police force, was part of the Islip Town Police Department.
Oh, I never knew that. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So and there's some history back at the museum. There's some things that they were able to find for me as well. So when he said that, again, it piqued my interest, and I've always been and felt that it's important for anyone, especially in my position as clergy, as a pastor, to be involved in my community. I've lived in my community for my entire life. Mm-hmm. I look at myself sometimes as the pastor of that community as well, whether people look at it that way. So this was going to give me another opportunity to now expand that role of relationships and of caring for people. And that's really how it came about. Just kind of conversation.
So I think that's really cool how it's kind of just an organic thing that kind of just happened. You have these groups, all these religious leaders get together and talk. It's kind of like the conferences we do, right?
Yes.
We get together with other union leaders from around the county, from around the state. And you guys kind of do the same sort of thing, discuss what's happening in the community. And it just kind of organically happened where you came into the police department, became a chaplain. And I never knew that your father was one of the town cops. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, we're not sure why he didn't get selected for Suffolk, because he was kind of on a probationary period.
Okay.
And he hadn't rested. They found some information about what he had done, but he did have an accident sometime around that point too. So that's the only thing I could ever figure. He fell off a ladder. He was in the fire department also, and they were training actually for the races. And, yeah. And he was doing buckets, and he fell down the ladder and was in a body cast for a while. So I'm thinking that because it all came about right at that same time.
Those fire department races are really cool. My father-in-law used to be part of that. It's called the drill team, I think, right? Yeah. My father-in-law used to be part of that for the Holbrook FD. And I know my wife grew up watching him go to these races and, compete with against all the other different fire departments. You remember going to competitions?
Labor Day was the end of the summer. Labor Day, they always had a tournament in Islip Terrace.
Yeah.
And that's where we were. There was no question. That's where we were.
Yeah, that's cool.
Fun. I've gone over. I've got some members of my congregation who are part of the Central Islip Fire Department. I've been there at those tournaments. They're a lot of fun. They are. It's just it's nice to see them compete like that, and it's just a lot of fun with everybody there and cheering on the individual departments. So
absolutely.
Competition.
So I like to hear that there is a chaplain assigned to every precinct, right? So you kind of divide up the duties. Nobody gets too inundated with too much going on either. But do you ever feel that even though maybe there's a familiar face because there's somebody specific assigned to a precinct, that, because so many chaplains are different denominations, maybe a Catholic wants to talk to a Catholic priest. Maybe, somebody who's Jewish wants to talk to a rabbi. Do you ever find that maybe the person assigned to a specific command might have to delegate out to somebody else for a reason like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done that. So even though there is assigned to a precinct, as I said before, too, is that we're chaplain for the entire department. So I've had instances where there's someone who is Muslim and wants to speak to a Muslim chaplain, and it's better in that case. And we have an imam. Same thing with someone who's Jewish. We have a rabbi. And there are times where because predominantly the department is Catholic. Just as this area is,
right?
And so we have a priest and a deacon, and sometimes it's just they would rather speak to someone in their own faith, being more comfortable. And absolutely, we change that and delegate that out to make sure that someone's comfortable. Because that's the most important thing for me with this is that, again, going back to relationships, when you're speaking with someone, there's a comfort level when you walk into the room, when you sit down, when you have a coffee with someone or wherever it might be, so that you're not trying to get over some hurdle, which is going to prohibit you from opening up and speaking, to whatever that issue might be. It might be on the job. It might not be. It might be something at home. We're there for whatever the issue might be. And I explain that to the recruits when we have our chaplain meeting with them right before graduation, is we're not just here for what might happen on the job. We're here if something is happening in your home. We're here if something is happening with your children, with your wife or spouse or just family. Something that is going on, we're here for that as well.
So you lived your whole life in the Islip area. Did you grow up always wanting to be involved with the church? Was this kind of like your career type goals? Or is this, again, something that kind of just happened organically based on how your faith developed over time?
Yeah, and organic is a good word. Because as a Lutheran, I believe I can do nothing on my own. It's something that comes from the Holy Spirit. And so I was baptized in the church I'm at. And that was back in, I won't tell you the year. So, and I had two siblings. My parents were not churchgoers, but what they wanted was that we would go up till we made our confirmation. And Lutheran Church confirmation was when we were in 8th grade, 14 years old. After that point, we could make a decision on whether we wanted to continue. So I went through Sunday school. I went through confirmation. I continued still attending services. In fact, I just, one of my mom's best friends growing up, my mom died when she was 59, but one of her best friends is still alive. She's 93. And I've been visiting with her recently. She's also a member of the congregation. And she brought up a story to me, which I never realized, where they'd be talking on the phone and they were talking about me. It says, yeah, he walks to church. What's wrong with this guy? But not saying it that way. So it was just,
right.
And so throughout high school, I was involved with the church, played softball for the church, taught Sunday school for the church, got into college. And at some point there was a thought of that, hey, maybe the ministry is where I want to go. Got into college, excuse me. Then I got a job and started making money. And so I kind of pushed the vocation part of being a pastor to the background. And so I went to work. My first job after high school and after I graduated from college was with Abraham and Strauss A&S department store in Brooklyn. Transitioned that to eventually owning my own commercial floor covering company, which I did for about 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And all the while, I would attend church, but as far as becoming a pastor and doing anything with the church other than being the president of the council, which I was, and being on council and doing those type of things, I put all that stuff aside. Then as with business, and there were good times and bad times. It depends on what the economy is doing and ups and downs. Commercially, I was a little bit more protected against that. But we had some great clients. Tommy Hilfiger, JetBlue, Ralph Lauren. I did a lot of names. Some big names. Yeah. We had a pretty decent sized company going. And long story short, or however you want to say it, is my denomination, my synod, opened up an opportunity for long distance education to become a pastor. Let me backtrack a little bit about that, because in 2001, I entered into what we have as a diaconate program. So you become a deacon. A little different than the Catholic Church, where you become an ordained deacon. We have deacons who are still lay ministers, and it's a 2-year training period. I entered that right after September 11th, 2001. And I had done a lot of business down in downtown Manhattan. A lot of that business now was gone.
Right.
And I entered into this, and everything just started to come together to the point where some people in the church and some people outside the church started asking me, did I ever consider going into the ministry? And then to the point where my synod opened up an opportunity to do some long distance training along with some residential visits. And I entered the seminary in 2009. At the same time, my oldest son entered the seminary, but he did residentially. Oh, wow. Yeah. So the joke was always that I took the helicopter parenting to the whole and was ordained in 2011, and then interim for a church in Dix Hills for a year. And then when I got back to Trinity in 2014 to be the assistant pastor, the senior pastor at the time announced that he was retiring in June. And that was in June of 2014. And here I am.
Wow. Yeah. So on September 11th, obviously a lot happened that day, and it altered the lives of many people. Did you feel like this was already in motion before that day, or was this kind of the catalyst that got you moving that way?
I think it was in motion already because I had entered into the diaconate program that had nothing to do with 9/11. I was like, there was always that drawback, and I've said this before, and my thought was when I was in high school, that was the direction that God wanted me to go, and I put it aside because I was making money, I was raising a family, I had no time, I can't do this. And what I've said to people is, well, God said, I'll show you how we can make this possible. Okay. And I'm not giving up on you. This is the direction and where I'm calling you to be. And we have a joke in our faith is, or it could really be any faith, is that when, you have that feeling that someone's calling you to be a pastor, just make sure it's not indigestion. Because we can always have these feelings, right? I'm sure the same thing was for you guys. When did you want to become think about becoming a police officer? And
so why I brought up 9/11 again too is because that I was a sophomore in high school at the time. And that was really around the first time where I was like, oh, it would be cool to be a first responder, be a cop, be a fireman, maybe join the military. Ultimately decide not to join the military, but I did become a cop.
Yeah.
To be honest, I wanted to be a firefighter at first. And I just grew up and I played football in high school. And a lot of my coaches were firemen and cops. And one of my favorite coaches was a fireman. So I wanted to be a fireman. And then I got to the point where I got called by the NYPD. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start there. And then I was hoping to still go the other way. And then I got on this job. And after NY called me and I just turned it down, I felt like I loved what I was doing and I was making a difference. And this was where I was meant to be.
Yeah. And whether it's something like 9/11 happening or something else, many times there's something that is going on or something in the past that kind of gives you a direction or makes you think, wow, this might be the path that I'm going towards. And I think, the same thing, being an officer is a vocation. Okay. It's a service vocation, that is beyond just a job. You live it, you breathe it, you take it home with you. It's just a total part of you. It's part of your families. It becomes just all consuming and good things about it. And that's the same thing as in terms of being a clergy, religious leader, pastor. It becomes all consuming. So when that call comes, it's something that you realize that you really can't even turn away from any longer.
Right.
And so what 9/11 did for me, it's actually where I met Steve Unger first.
Good idea.
Class. Yeah. So when that happened, it just helped me kind of reflect differently as my business life was starting to, was this where I really wanted to go for the rest of my life kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Was this what I really wanted to do? And then that happens. And it started me, thinking, praying even more, where's God calling me to be and how is this going to look in next year, 10 years from now?
Did it feel almost like an internal conflict or was it pretty clear pretty quickly which way you want to go?
It was pretty clear pretty quick. Yeah.
Cool.
It really was.
That's great to hear.
There might have been an internal conflict along the way, but at that moment it was pretty clear. In fact, what I did is right after the diaconate program ended, which was in 2003, I was commissioned as a deacon at Trinity. I then entered into some other long distance education. So I did some seminary work. Mm-hmm. And so that was for a few years. Then I entered into the seminary. When a couple of years after that, I always joke I had 10 years of training and of teaching and of schooling to become a pastor, and I'm still learning. I believe every day, continued education is good for everybody.
Oh, I agree on that 100%. I mean, we talk about it all the time how there's always something you could learn, and we bring up ego is the enemy, right?
Yes,
to think that everything is naive, right? So it's good to always be open and always be looking to learn more.
I find it interesting, like you said, like you felt like this calling in high school, and then you went on you were starting to make money, and you were successful, and then all of a sudden you felt like you were being called back, and it was like an urge that you couldn't really look past any longer. Yeah. I feel like God just puts us in places that he puts you where you're supposed to be, and I feel like for you, you've added so much experience to your life now that you could share that with the people that you preach to. So,
and I think we can fight it. That's part of the free will that we have in life, and yet if we're not living up to that potential or that calling that is in front of us, and there's a lot of reasons sometimes you can't do it. I mean, I get that. Yet you brought up that internal conflict, and what you're saying, Tanner, is if you fight that. And that's how you live your life. That creates I believe it just creates other turmoil within your life that isn't healthy.
Yeah. It is very healthy to be at peace with your decisions and be happy with what you're doing and how you're leading your life. Like, I say all the time, yes, after 9/11, that's when I first started to think about becoming a police officer. And then once I became a police officer, it became very clear, like, all right, if I want to really help people, it would be really cool to be able to help the people that help the people. Right. And that's how I got into the union work. Right. So it was very organically, and it was kind of just something that made sense and became a calling of sorts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just because obviously we're on this topic, I feel so called to bring this up that because I grew up like a Catholic, and I went to Catholic school my whole life through high school, and after I left high school, I got away from the church for a while, And then about like 3 years ago, I started going back to the church, and I felt like so stressed at a point in my life. And I feel like maybe there's a lot of other people out there that have felt this way. And I feel like since I've gone back to church, I started praying again that I feel a lot more at peace because of that.
Yeah.
So
I believe what's happening is you're releasing that which is inside of you and giving it over to God. Okay. And that can work for any faith. Instead of trying to do everything on our own, and you guys know this. I mean, there are things that are out of your control, and how do you deal with those things that are out of your control, right? And so to be able to release that through prayer, to be able to release that through some type of devotion, to be able to release that in the fellowship of a congregation, and our society is different than it was when I was growing up. Okay, but again, I mentioned that my parents were not churchgoers, and there was a boom of people going to church in the 50s and 60s, and it waned a little bit. Then there was another, a lot of children were being born. And so it's in the late 80s, early 90s, 90s and early 2000s. So the churches were filled up again. Then things happened, 9/11 happened, the church got filled up again. Then it starts to wane a little bit. And what we see is at least, and from my perspective, is a society that struggles with a lot of things because we don't have that foundation. We don't have that which we can rely on and go back to, which is our faith, right? That's the key to everything. And when we can just find that peace. And look, the church hasn't always been good at giving people peace. I'm not saying that every church does that well, or every faith does that well. But when you can find a place where you're worshiping, and find a place that you can go to that is a sense of community, a sense of calm, and a sense of knowing that God is in your life and is and has forgiven you and cares for you. And that's kind of what the season we're in right now, right?
Right.
Our focus is on the one who God sent into this world as a baby to set in motion, to come in the flesh, to set in motion what is to eventually was happen on Easter Sunday that we talk about, or on Good Friday that we talk about, to give of himself for us. And to know that there is something bigger than us. For me, it's God. Okay. It's Father, Son, Holy Spirit is bigger than me. That allows me to be able to deal with the things in this world that make no sense.
And having faith that he's watching over us and is going to put us in the situations that we're meant to be in.
Yeah. Or care for us enough in those situations that sometimes those things happen, because sometimes we're in those positions that how did we get here, right? Or how did this happen? And again, I'm talking to guys who live that. And then how does God then treat us or treat you or care for you to carry you through to get you to a place of whole, where you're whole again?
I think that's especially true for police officers who oftentimes deal with the worst of the worst. And we sometimes see the best of the best, but oftentimes we're dealing with people at their worst. And I feel like having somebody there, or at least knowing that somebody's there with you to help you through that situation, and that's God.
Yeah. And that helps you when you deal with someone, right? Because when that person who's out of control, when it's that person who it makes just nothing that is happening there makes any sense, you look at them maybe a little differently. You know what? I'm going to try. Let's see if we can care for this person. Let's see if we can do this without it escalating into something that's going to be really, really out of control and harm them. Obviously, get it under control, but know that, you know what? I can do this. I can work through this in a way that is going to be beneficial for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we see it often where, police officers are within moments of losing their lives, and we're there with the families, right? We're trying to help keep them comfortable and keep them faithful that things are going to work out. And we've been fortunate here in Suffolk County recently that a lot of times those close calls, we've been, thanks to the work of Dr. Voss and the staff at Stony Brook, we've been on the good side of these situations lately. But I had prior time in New York City, and I was on scenes where police officers were killed. I was on the crime scene of when Officer Lou and Officer Ramos got assassinated. So I've seen the situations too, where it's like, all right, how did we get here? How did something like this happen? Yeah. Like, this is so awful.
Yeah, right. And it happens so quick, right?
Right.
And it happens. And you just brought up something too, CJ, that I mentioned before about being there for the officers, for their, a family situation or an on the job situation. We're also there for the families.
Right.
So I'm still in contact with a family of an officer who died a few years back. So the work continues. And it really is that whatever I'm able to do, and I learn from them too. So it's not a one-way street that, this is all that I'm giving them. They give back to me as well. But it extends to the families too. After something happens, while the family's going through a tragedy, if it happens, and again, the officers that are involved in it as well. So it encompasses so much, and that's just relationships. That's just life, right? Life encompasses so much and so many people, which, to go back to what we were talking about before, is why I like being in Islip. Mm-hmm. I had an opportunity to be the pastor at the church that I was interim in back in 2013. And it's a great church. It's a great community. I still know many of those people today, but I just feel comfortable. And look, God doesn't always want us to be comfortable. Sometimes it's better to be, out of our comfort zone. Yet I know people. I walk down the block. People say hello to me. I go to get some lunch in town, and people know who I am.
You're part of the community.
I'm part of the community, and that to me is important. Mm-hmm. That helps extend God's message out to a greater number of people.
Yeah, I think being part of the community is a huge asset and works in your favor tremendously. Because when I was still on patrol, I used to love walking into, say, the local deli, and the deli owner knows who I am, right? Or walk into any of the local businesses, and they're happy to see a familiar face. They know you're there to help. It's just being part of the community, not just being hired to serve the community. It is two different things.
Yeah. And I'll share a funny story with you. It's an embarrassing one, but I was joking. So I decided that unlike the Catholic Church, we don't have incense a lot. And we have midweek Advent services right now. So last Wednesday, I decided, and I had gotten this from our district bishop, have an incense service, an evening prayer incense service. So I hadn't done it before, so I ordered everything in. I'm sitting in my office, and I started with, getting everything burning, and it wasn't really working right. So I put a little more incense in there, and now it's going. This is good, So I turn around, I start working on my computer, and all of a sudden it's 3:00 in the afternoon. We have a preschool, and they have fire drills, but they end at 3:00. So it's like 3:05. Like, why are they having a fire drill at 3:05? And I look up at the smoke detectors, right? And so the embarrassing part, of course, is now I go downstairs. One of our parents is part of the Islip Fire Department. He said, "Pastor, what's going on?" I said, "No, it's." I explained to him what we're doing. We went into the where the panel was. We shut it down. He calls the department, calls fire department, fire the house, and says, "False alarm. Don't worry about it. Don't come." Our preschool director didn't know what was going on, so she automatically called 911. Set off the county system. Pretty soon, a truck was rolling up into the parking lot. They all know me. So we got to chuckle out of it. But that's one of the parts about knowing people, again, that even in those circumstances, you can kind of laugh about it.
Right, absolutely.
And they're okay with it.
Absolutely.
So
now, throughout the Advent season, so over at our church near where I live, my wife teaches in the preschool there. My daughter went through that preschool. My son's currently going through the preschool. Mm-hmm. So we've been trying to get a little more involved with the church and church community. So recently, my wife and a bunch of her girlfriends, a lot of the moms in the neighborhood, went to a Advent wreath building event, and they had so much fun. And I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I didn't even know an Advent wreath was a thing, specifically. And they had so much fun, being involved in these community events and getting together at the church, just having a good time, drinking hot cocoa while they're being creative. So what kind of community events do you guys have? Do you do similar types of stuff, get everybody engaged during off hours, so to speak?
Yeah. So to use that example. So last week, before the service that I was talking about, we had the preschool and our Sunday school come together, and we had cards that are going out that our youth group that meets on Sunday evenings sends out Christmas cards to people. And so we had everybody come in color cards, have some pizza. We started out with lighting the lights, which we did a few years ago, bring the community in, bring everybody together. We light the lights outside in the bushes, and then we bring everybody back in. So that's what we do this time of year. Next year, 2027, we have our 100th anniversary. And so we're going to be planning events with that as well. So
cool.
It's in February of 2027. So throughout 2026, we'll have different events That includes, which we've been doing also the last few years, the parking lot party. So in September, we get a bounce house. We get the fire department to come in. We get the police department to come in. And we just invite everybody from our church, as well as preschool, as well as the neighbors around us to come. Mr. Softy's there, and we do things like that where we have outreach. And when this airs, our third Advent midweek service is something we call Blue Christmas. Blue Christmas has originated out of the longest day of the year, which was December 21st. And just the way it falls, we try to do these on Wednesdays. And so there are many people that we know, and maybe, someone in our own family that struggles at Christmas time. Mm-hmm. The loss of a loved one, someone who got sick, or whatever might be going on. They just don't have the joy inside of them at that moment. And so we try to do a service that we call a service of remembrance, of lighting a candle to remember someone, but also to help them to be at peace, find some comfort, and know that there is still hope.
Right.
In a season that everybody's just kind of running around, and you're looking at it like, wow, this isn't what I want. This isn't for me. Yeah. So a number of things that we do, and we've been part of the fairs in town. We have a food pantry, and we get involved with our, some of our local groups there. We've got a restaurant in town that donates to us because we kind of reciprocate. We have a Christmas fair that we bring people in, and the community comes in. A lot of things that we do. We try to reach out and make the community a part of who we are, our community, our fellowship of our community. Yeah.
So I like that you bring up the Blue Christmas and how sometimes, some people struggle, during, holidays or say birthdays of, people that we've lost over the course of time. Because I have a stepsister that passed away a few years ago. So I know my stepmother in particular has a very hard time around, certain holidays and birthdays. Do you ever feel that, as maybe you're helping a family through, like, say, a Blue Christmas, have people started to lose faith and they're looking to be brought back in? Do you help bring them back in and say, this is just another obstacle, but we'll get through this sort of thing, just continue to have faith? Like, what's that like, kind of interacting with families during that time, during that struggle?
Like any other struggle, and certainly for a loss for someone, what I can share with someone is my own personal testimony. I can share what God has done for them, but also for all mankind. Okay, going back to that whole thing before, coming in the flesh in Jesus, what God has given to us. People are waning faith. There's no question. And when a tragedy happens, when there's something that goes on, the question is always why. Mm-hmm. Why did this happen? Why, where is God in all this? And if that's the God, then I don't want any part of that. And so the conversations or the position that I find myself in sometimes is just being there for someone, being present with someone more than even speaking. Mm-hmm. That opens up conversation now where we can discuss, how have they handled that before? How has faith played a role in that before? Do you see where God possibly in other situations that occurred, how he was able to help you through that? The answer may be no. Ultimately, for someone to come back into faith is up to God. Mm-hmm. I'm there as the vehicle. I'm there as the instrument for God to share his word, share his love, share his caring for someone. And ultimately, though, it's something that is out of my control, out of everyone's control. Some people eventually find that peace and return knowing that, what, this is what's going to keep me going here. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they walk away, and it frustrates me. And it's one of the hardest things when people, for me, when I see somebody who's suffered and the first thing they do is pull away from what I believe is where they can find the most peace and comfort. And so that can be a struggle. Yeah.
Do you see people, like you said, pull away and then return maybe later, like down the road a little bit after maybe you were guiding them to come back? Maybe they lost and then they came back a little while later?
Yeah. There are many like that, and I find myself sometimes too when I see people who are gathering on a Sunday, and my mind immediately goes, yeah, but that one wasn't there, that one wasn't there. I can kind of, and sometimes that happens too with those situations where I'm thinking about the person who didn't return, and I kind of gloss over the one who did. But there are many cases like that, Tanner, where someone comes back, and again, it's not me. It's just that I've been used as that vehicle, as that instrument to share. And I've become very good friends with someone in particular that I'm thinking of right now, in that situation where it was just many years. Yeah, but we're very good friends now. Yeah.
So, being part of that vehicle to bring people, back into faith or into faith for the first time, do you ever find yourself interacting with, say, somebody who is just always an atheist and just never really believed in anything, which I always found kind of sad, because I believe in that there's something that, that there is an afterlife. I believe that there is something. Yeah. So I've always felt bad for atheists who just like, this is it. You're on earth for 80 something years, maybe 90, and that's over. It's gone.
Can I answer CJ's thing? Have you ever also been around an atheist maybe, and then they've realized and come to the church? Like, has that happened too?
So it's funny as you're both speaking this. So we have a neighbor who, when I first started speaking to him, would declare himself an atheist. Mm-hmm. And one day he starts talking about something, and he talks about God. And I said, "This is pretty good. We've started. We're making steps here. We're going from atheist to agnostic now. This is good. We'll get you over to a believer as well." Yes, because God can do that. God can take, someone who is dead and raise them from the dead, right? And so whether we're spiritually dead or that we're physically dead, okay, that's something that is only going to happen again when Christ returns. But spiritually dead, the spiritual dead do come back. God can ignite a fire in them and bring back a faith. I agree with you. When something happens, many people say, I don't know how you can get through this without faith. Even when you're struggling with it, even when you're angry, at least there's a conversation going. When people say that, I'm mad at God, or I'm screaming at God, okay, keep the lines open, right? We have family members that when we're going through difficult times, maybe the tensions raise, right, and rise up. Keep the communication going, and we pray that eventually you'll find that peace that you need to continue on. Yeah.
So. Along those same lines with like the community interaction, actually being like a recruiter, right? That's kind of like what you are. How much do the youth get involved with, like, say, after the preschool, maybe do you have like church sports? Do you have other sorts of youth programs that keeps them engaged and involved with the church throughout into adulthood?
Yeah. So from preschool, our preschool is part of the church, and it's also under the state guidelines of OCFS. So and that's for our 2-year-olds, our 3s and 4s. And it's been a little harder over these last number of years with universal pre-K to retain the 4s, although we're doing a pretty good job of it this past year. When they leave, a lot of those families are not fully attached to our parish and our congregation. They're coming from the community. But we also have a Sunday school that starts in preschool also, and that Sunday school then goes until 6th grade. So when we have we have 2 services on Sunday, 1 on Saturday, but at the second service on Sunday, we have a Sunday school that runs concurrently with the service. So parents come, they bring their children into Sunday school. After 6th grade, we then transition them into our confirmation class. So it's 7th and 8th grade, where they meet during the week with our director of Christian education. After that, then, and even during that, Chris meets with them on Sunday evenings for a youth group. So there's always there's a connection there, as long as they're willing to be a part of that. And really, it's not so much them. A lot of times, it's the parents. That they're, I got to keep going. I got to keep getting them there. I mentioned the story before. When we finished confirmation as children, I kept walking to church. Not going to happen in today's society too often. Okay, right. The kid is going to go walking too far without the parents being there and making sure they get back and forth. So it requires a lot of parental help and involvement to get them there. But Chris does a great job with them. And then there's a lot of connection when they go off to college. We just try to keep them connected through packages, through emails, through text. that they
you
haven't
text
been
them.
forgotten.
Mm.
Yeah. And then invariably what happens is then they get into college or they get out and they just kind of fade away. It's what life is. I did it. I'll be honest with you. Okay. My wife is a Catholic family. And before we started dating, we were kind of both, separate from our churches. Then we started dating. Now we're alternating, going from the Lutheran church one week to the Catholic church the next week. But then you have children. And now everything changes because now you want to baptize your child. You want your child enrolled in preschool and the Sunday school. So the whole cycle starts again. Because of the way our society has gone over these last 20 years, the number of people who have that affinity of returning back to the church in that way isn't as strong as it was years ago. And there are a lot of reasons for that, okay? So what we try to do is just help them to navigate, especially for people who are not used to faith or not used to the way that church is, right? And we do the best we can to navigate them in that. So
not to make this like a political conversation, but I know like the whole situation with like Charlie Kirk recently, I saw a lot on the news that it seemed like a lot of people were pushing to go back to church, like they were looking for something and they guided them back to church. As a pastor, do you think that is that both true in this area of Suffolk County or from what you've seen or experienced?
I can only speak from personal experience, and I have had a couple of people tell me that when they came back into the church. Whether or not it did, what it hopefully does for everyone is to just look at our lives and how quickly a life can end, okay, which should never end that way. And so then start to, just think about some of these things. And again, going back to what is the most important thing in our life? What do we have when we have nothing? Well, we have our faith. We do. And that's the foundation. So if that's what can happen, back to our discussion before about when bad things happen, God can then turn those things into something that can blossom, something that can grow. So that's how I look at what happened, is that whether or not, again, put the politics aside, if someone is questioning now or has a trying to figure this all out and says, well, maybe that is going to help me go back into my church, into my faith, then God will use that.
I feel like in the Bible too, like some of the biggest stories kind of are talking about what you're talking about. Like God put people in compromising situations, in tough situations to test their faith.
Yeah. Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. Okay. He did everything he possibly could to get out. And God just kept dragging him in. And Moses didn't want to be Moses. He didn't want to do what he was doing. God said, no, this is what we're doing. Yeah, you're right. This is, you look at, we'll jump ahead to the Easter season, but you look at Peter denying his Lord, and then being brought back into the fold, and sending him out to grow the church. So yeah, there's many circumstances and many cases that we can point to in Scripture that help us. Yeah.
So you brought up earlier that your son has been very involved with the church and now too. Yeah. How's he doing? Where is he at?
He lives. He and his my daughter-in-law Stephanie live in Glendale in Queens. Mm-hmm. He's a pastor of St. John's on Myrtle Avenue, and he is actually, we joke about this too, he's the first vice president of our district, so he's gone a little further than I have. And doing quite well. He's also very community minded. He plants a garden every year around the church, and then they give out the whatever grows out to the members or to the community, I should say, on a Sunday morning. Hands them bags of fruits and vegetables, and has gotten my grandchildren involved in it as well. Noah and Lydia, who are go to Sunday school there and trying to grow that. So yeah, they do very well. Great neighborhood. If you've ever been to Glendale in Queens, it is we joke often, and we drive there every Halloween because every house is decorated for Halloween, and it's just a great community to grow up into. Yeah. So they're doing well. So thank you for asking.
It's great to hear. And now you have two sons, right?
I have three. I have three boys.
3 sons.
Yep.
So and one of the other sons just recently had a baby.
Yep. So Alec and Kaylee, who live down in Christiansburg, just had our third granddaughter and our fourth grandchild. So
wow! Congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah. So we got to go there in November. I got to be there for the day she was born. Got to hold her, jumped back in the car and came back up here. But we're going to go back down again and visit. So that's Aubrey Ann, and then Kinsley will be 3 in April. So, 3 boys and now have 4 grandchildren, 3 of them girls. And my youngest son, he's a athletic director for a Lutheran school in Maspeth, and has coached basketball and travel teams and school teams that he's been coaching basketball. So doing all of them doing very well. Thanks.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks be to God.
And the middle son, you said, is a deputy sheriff now in law enforcement?
My middle son was. Sorry about that. Yeah. So he was in Greensboro, and he went to the academy there, became a deputy sheriff, did that for about 4 or 5 years, starting to realize it probably wasn't for him. Mm-hmm. Buddy of his had gotten into a domestic issue with someone, and it got violent, and just kind of working through that again, how things work, right? Was it something sudden, or was it something that was working through over time? An opportunity came up to be a teacher in the local school. He had no teaching background or anything else, and he took the job. They hired him, went back for his schooling. He's now finishing up his master's to become an administrator. Oh,
that's great.
And it's, so it's worked out great.
That's great. It's fun. Yeah. It's funny how things fall into place over time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So something interesting that I just learned, because I was going through your social media history, was you actually had a former Major League Baseball player living with you at one point in time when he was playing with the Ducks. You were a host family. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
So this is back in 2013. I get a call from what we call Pan-Lutheran. There were different synods of Lutheran churches, and this came through as Pan-Lutheran. So it's another synod, another part of the Lutheran faith, that said the Ducks were looking for a host family for a particular individual, a Christian who didn't want to live in the hotel or quote unquote flop houses that the Ducks are offering, where it's, they all get together, and they just wanted something that was more quiet, more family setting orientation. That happened to be Eric Neeson. Eric, at the time, he had been drafted by the Mets and coming through the years, and was now trying to resurrect his baseball career, and went to the Ducks, a pitcher. And Eric moved in with us first. And then we met his family and met his wife, and that went on for about 2-3 years maybe. It's funny, I'm a big sports fan. Mm-hmm. And so when you see someone who gets traded or they leave the team, you're like, either you're happy or angry, but you don't think about the person. Mm-hmm. He came home. It was Memorial Day weekend. And even in the Atlantic Baseball League, he walks in the door and goes, I just got traded. Mm-hmm. And you got to deal with that. Right. And so it was just an interesting, we're on the other side of it now, right? All that happened. So Eric then moves on. He's very successful now. He lives in Wake, in North Carolina. He's with Wake Forest College. And so now there's another opportunity, and now it's Darren Downs. And so Darren moved in with us. And Darren, actually his family moved in with us that summer as well. We had a great time. Still stay in touch with Darren. He's back down in Florida. Now he was with Detroit, with Houston. And now he's a pitching coach and has a camp down in Florida, and he coaches his kids. And a great family man, and just a great husband. It's been a great experience. And if anybody ever has the opportunity to do it, I know the Ducks are always looking for host families. You really just they become your family, and it's something that we've held on to. And it helps. It actually, even Darren became very close to my youngest son, who was still living in the house at the time. Not that Eric didn't, but they were all kind of doing their thing. It was usually our youngest son. Our youngest son is 8 years younger than our middle son. Okay. And so he's an only child with brothers.
That's a cool experience for your younger son.
It really was. And it really helped out a lot. And it was a cool experience for all of us, but it was really cool for Caleb. Yeah.
It's funny too. Like when I think of a host family, I think of like just the player going to live with you. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned that his family was there?
Yeah. The family was. It's just the way the situation worked out, that his wife came up, and at the time he had 2 kids, and they came into, and we have a big house, and so it was okay to do, and we're kind of pretty easy. My wife Trish is very easygoing and that kind of stuff. She's one of 10,
right.
So having a lot of people around the house has never been an issue for. It's more for me. I say to people, even in what I do, I consider myself an introvert. I grew up one of 3, and I like my alone time, and I will find my alone time when I need to. But yeah, she's very good. My wife has been very good with that. Yeah.
Were there any sort of like lessons that your youngest son may have learned from living with these professional athletes? Maybe something along the lines of work ethic, eating habits, exercise, how you take care of your body.
Yeah, I think work ethic in terms of how you take care of taking care of yourself, but also how to deal with the disappointment. There's a lot of disappointment in sports. Not just in life, just in sports, especially baseball, right? And how do you deal with that? And they're very good role models in that case and in that way, both Eric and Darren, in the way that they would come home and not let what happened at the game affect when they walked in the door. They talk about it, and at the time Caleb was playing sports in high school, and so they could relate to what was going on as well. So yeah, it really worked out well for him.
Yeah. So speaking of how sports sometimes lets you down, I think you're a Met fan, right? I know we've spoken about this.
Let's not get
right?
into this.
So the Mets just lost Edwin Diaz and Pete Alonso in the same week.
And they traded Brandon Nimmo.
Right. For Marcus Simeon.
So when I see my phone, it was lighting up this morning as I was walking with that same question. So my response is, and look, I am a Met fan, and we joke that as a Christian, we have to be Met fans because we know sacrifice. And so we've had this our entire lives. I haven't won for 40 years. I mean, this is coming up on 40 years since they won a championship. And that's my answer right now. I don't know do you know who Ralph Kiner was?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ralph Kiner had a fabulous year one year. He led the league in home runs, and he goes to the Pittsburgh Pirates and says he wants a raise. And the owner said, "We finished in last place with you. We can finish in last place without you." So the Mets didn't make the playoffs last year. I mean, it hurts. You don't like to see players that you become so familiar with and really you like and love. But as I said to my boys 2 days ago, they finished in last. They didn't get to the playoffs last year. What's the worst that could happen this year? They don't get to the playoffs. I mean,
right.
Look, and I am a diehard Met fan. I'm a diehard Ranger fan, and you can ask my family. I will bleed with them when things going on. But in this case, I'm kind of just trying to step back a little bit,
right,
and let's see where it all plays out.
It's funny. So my son loves baseball, loves sports. He wears a baseball jersey almost every day, and we're primarily Yankee fans, but we watch the Mets whenever the Yankees are off. Like, we're New York sport fans. So yesterday we go to a baseball practice, and my son's wearing a Pete Alonso jersey. And all these other grown men are like breaking his chops about it being a throwback jersey now. And it's my son's first experience of like, wow, it's crazy. This guy's not even going to be on the Mets anymore. He's going to be on the Orioles.
Yeah, so, it is crazy. It takes me back to a Duck story too. One of the things I liked about the Ducks, you can go to the Duck game and you just kind of, it's not a big deal, right? It's none of these things are really big deals, right? But we make them to be. And yet I remember as we were, I think it was Eric. Eric had a tough game. And was sitting there. People start screaming at him, and we're like, "Hey,
right.
This is family now."
Right.
But that's what we do. We get so invested in these things, and like Pete Alonso, we got a text chat that goes on during the season with some friends, and he hits a home run, and polar bear, emojis come out and whatnot, and Edwin Diaz. But again, with what we've been talking about here, things happen. And how do we deal with these things? We joke about it, and it's upsetting. We move on. I don't like using that term too much about moving on, but we find a way to see the light that comes and see how we can carry ourselves forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of Met fans are waiting to see what sort of shape that light takes. Yeah. What free agent are they going to go after
there's
now?
A Yankee in mind that I'd like to see come over. He plays a good center field, I understand. So.
So, another thing that I noticed when I was kind of going through your social media, recently you posted a lot about early detection and awareness when it comes to cancer. You were just at somewhat recently in the last few months. You were at a white party. Recognizing, bringing awareness to cancer and early detection. What's been kind of your journey with that? What brings you to trying to bring awareness to everybody out there that early detection is important?
Yeah. So my mom died at 59 of cancer. She had lung cancer, and when the doctors would ask me about family history, I'd always say, "Yeah, my mom had a heart attack at 57. She died of cancer at 59, but she was a heavy smoker. It was the generation, right? It was just a heavy smoker." And I really didn't think too much of it. And then it's now 2021. I'm 61 and I get diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I eat pretty healthy. In fact, a friend of mine, we met them right after the diagnosis. He's looking at me and goes, "You're the last person I thought this would happen to. Mm-hmm. You can't outrun your genetics." Okay. And so once and this was right after I actually got I was sent to a specialist by my GP after a blood test. It's a PSA test, which is a very simple test that showed that my number had elevated from the last test. And so I went for a biopsy, and my father also died in 2021, and we're at the luncheon after he dies, and I get a call from the doctor's office saying that it came back positive. Mm. So treatments, did my due diligence, did my treatments, and I'm now 4.5 years out, and they say the 5-year point is the period where you can kind of
we're almost there.
Put it there, right? And so with that, what I try to do is to raise awareness for men who don't like to go to doctors,
right?
And don't like to get get that carry. I had a doctor years ago when I was in my 30s, and I would go for a physical every year. He said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I'm here for a physical." He goes, "But why? Is there anything wrong with you?" I said, "No, I thought that's what we did."
Yeah, isn't this what I'm supposed to do?
Yeah. So I've always done that. I've always tried to take care of my health and whatnot. And so with that, I met a couple of other people, Steve Flotterin, mm-hmm. And I actually shared with Steve what was going on with me, and Tom Silmy also, and I shared with them one day what was going on. Steve was already part of a board for Women and Men Against Prostate Cancer. There's a woman, Lorraine Pacer. She had breast cancer back in I think it might have been 90s, 2000s, and really pushed for the whole thing where there's just more awareness, more conversation about women and breast cancer. And by the way, there are studies that show that there's a BRCA gene, that breast cancer and prostate cancer are very similar in terms of how they attack people in the same family. And so I became a board member of that board, became a member of that board. And that's just kind of grown out of that. And then I've kind of gotten involved with that with Movember to raise money for men's health issues, which includes testicular cancer, which my nephew had at a very young age, but other diseases as well, not just prostate cancer, but other cancers. I've just always been very aware of that which is around us, and that I believe through awareness, through research, we can kind of tackle these things. God has given us an ability to do a lot of these things, and we can tackle these things. And so the more money we can raise for that, the more awareness we can bring forth, the better I think it can be for even if it's just one person.
Right.
And so for my boys now, they'll get tested, the PSA at age 40. It's 50 if you haven't had any family history. It's a blood test.
Right.
So it's part of a panel, and then just go from there and just don't ignore it. Prostate cancer is not going to kill you, but where it spreads will. Mm-hmm. And so the earlier you can detect it, and that's the advantage I had. I had options of what my treatment was going to be. And I remember my oncologist, I eventually went to radiation. My oncologist said, "You can go this way, you can go that way. You have options because we caught it early enough. But if you don't catch it early enough, you lose your options."
Right.
Yeah. So that's how I've kind of got involved in that. The Movember thing was just kind of fun. I could grow a mustache. I had a mustache when we were married, but now I start growing it on November 1st, and it was the night of the 30th, or maybe December 1st, that I shaved it off. And a couple of the cops, we joke about that.
Yeah, you look like one of us.
Yeah, we do it together.
Does your wife like that you bring it back, or?
She actually, it's funny. She mentioned this the other day when I 'cause we had it when I had it when we were married, and the first time I shaved it off, she looked at me and says, "Who are you? I don't like it." But yeah, she likes it and she doesn't. She's okay with it either way. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Now with that Movember fundraiser that you did, I noticed that there was a matching funds aspect to it too.
Yeah.
And I saw at one point Pringles matched.
Yeah, Pringles did the last couple of years. Pringles has done it, and which is I find kind of funny since I don't associate Pringles with health.
Right.
But hey, you want to give money? I take the money from anybody. I do that at my church too. You want to give me money? I'm really not going to care.
You know that Pringles logo though, with the guy with the nice mustache, right? So I think that's a great thing. For
and earlier in the month, I think Gillette matched.
That makes sense. That's great,
and it's helpful. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot. Not that it's a great deal of work, but I sometimes feel that all I'm doing is pumping, trying to get money out of people, and I sometimes feel like you said before about selling or soliciting, right? And sometimes that's the role of pastor. It's
right.
And it's for a good cause too.
It is for a good cause, right? And that's the thing that people start to realize, and somehow someone's connected in something. It may not be prostate cancer. It may not be testicular cancer. My brother died of ALS a couple of years ago. So it's all these things that, that we suffer through as men. And is there money? Is there research? Is there some new technology out there that this dollar will bring in that can help us get to a point where someone else doesn't have to suffer? And if it's just one person, then I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, of course. It's just another great thing to be able to do, another tool in the toolbox to be able to help anybody that we can. Yeah. So, Mike, it's great having you on. I value our friendship tremendously. We've been able to grow closer, over the last 4 or 5 years since I've been involved with the PBA and you as a chaplain for the department. Is there anything you are hoping to see change going forward in your role as a chaplain, or something different that you're hoping to see the department evolve into to maybe improve the chaplain program?
I don't know about improving. I always, again, go back to education and growing. I think that's important. So I just think that and I think we're in a good place right now, in terms of the relationship that I have with the commissioner's office, and with the chief and all the chiefs and with the departments, with the unions. I think we're at a good spot.
I agree.
In terms of that. And I'm hoping that I've helped in that situation where, again, being present, being part of this. I haven't been around as long as Steve or John Trodden, who does a great job handling right now 2 precincts for me. And yet working together and working with the department, working with the individual cops, I want to just keep that going. I want to see that grow. I want the relationships to grow. I want somebody to be able to come over, whether I'm in my church or I'm having coffee somewhere, and stop and sit down and talk to me and be free to do that. One of the advantages that I have with a collar is I have a confidentiality agreement, not agreement, but by state law, they cannot force me to testify anything that anybody would ever say to me. And my confidentiality comes through my ordination, through my synod. So that goes for anything, even my congregation at Trinity when I'm speaking to people. And so if maybe in the way that you asked that question, if I'd like to see anything grow, is for people to be more comfortable with that. Forget the collar. I mean, most times I'm not wearing my collar. I'm out in the community. I'm walking around. A lot of times people don't even know me. I've got a baseball hat on. I've got my sunglasses on. I've got a t-shirt on, whatever it might be, sweatshirt. I'm at the gym. People don't know who I am. I want people to just be comfortable, and whether it's me or one of the other chaplains, just be comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what's going on today, or just, know that someone's there for you, and that we're present for you. Yeah.
So what I love about the current program is the accessibility that there is to everybody, right? I mean, you were just at the SOA's Christmas party yesterday. We see you at PBA events all the time. You're always accessible. You're a familiar face to not just the PBA board, but the membership or everybody within the police department. And I think that familiar face and how you have a chaplain assigned to every precinct now, I think that was a great step. And I think that is helping overcome any obstacles. I think
it's
that's
a great resource for our members.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. And again, I'm with the recruits for the chaplain address, and I'm also with Chief Regina and John Sumwalt, who retired a couple of years ago. We do below 100. Mm-hmm. And so they take care of most of the program, in terms of when's the last time that across the country we had under 100 deaths in law enforcement. It's been 1943. I mean, it's crazy number, crazy time, right? But when I speak to them, I speak from the chaplain side, but I also say, hey, there are other avenues. It's one of the things on your tool belt that there's going to be a day that something's going on. If you're comfortable speaking to me, speak to me. If you're comfortable speaking to the rabbi, speak to the rabbi. If you're comfortable speaking to someone else, employee assistants, peer team, whoever it might be, just don't let it build. Don't let it build on top of each other. Address it early. Kind of going back to the health thing, right? If we address these things early, we can probably find a way out.
Right. That works mentally too.
Yes, exactly. And spiritually. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's by getting that message out there, and I'm glad to hear you say that. That's kind of where I'm hoping that we just let this grow. Let's grow together and do this. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to close out this episode. I think we hit on a lot. I'm very excited to be able to have an episode like this that centers around a lot of faith and mental health to be able to go out on Christmas Eve. I think that the timing's going to work out great. Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on. I value your friendship, and I look forward to seeing you again. I'm sure I'm going to see you probably by the end of the week.
Yeah, most likely, exactly. And right back to you, CJ. I really do value the friendships that we've developed, and with you, Tanner, and with everybody in the department. And keep the faith.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.